Hi, in this video we are going to look at some of the applications or some of the scenarios which we can build using the SSL VPN. First, let's take a look at the general scenario or situation where the certificates are being exchanged by the client and server for authenticating either the server or authenticating the server as well as the client. So this is a situation. We have a client here and we have a server or the gateway device here, and we want to make sure that they are able to communicate with each other using SSL VPNs. So the server is going to have a local server certificate, or what we call a local certificate, plus a CA certificate which is going to be issued by the CA and which is going to be used for authenticating the server certificate. Similarly, the client can have a client certificate issued to the client by the CA, and this client certificate will be verified or will be authenticated using the CA certificate. And the important thing is that the server certificate, the client certificate are going to be issued by the same CA which is providing the CA certificate. So the server is going to download the CA certificate and its server certificate. Similarly, the client is going to download or is going to have its client certificate as well as the CA certificate. So when the client wants to authenticate the server is going to pass on its server certificate to the client, and the client is going to check the server certificate against the CA certificate which has already been downloaded by the client. Similarly, if the server wants to authenticate the client, which is optional, the client is going to forward its client certificate to the server, and the server is going to verify this client certificate against the CA certificate which the server has already downloaded. So in this way, using this mechanism, we can have either the server being authenticated by the client or both the server authenticated by the client and the client being authenticated by the server. How this happens is, or how these certificates are downloaded, the process is fairly simple. Once we create the certificates, either we can generate the certificate, or if we have a certificate already generated on our machine, we can upload that certificate to the firewall, and the firewall has got these two server certificates available with it. Similarly, the server should also have a CA certificate available with this. Then when we configure the user authentication, or when we configure the SSL, we are going to have a local certificate which is going to be one of the certificates. You can select either one of the certificates that are available, and then we have the client CA certificate which is going to be used for authenticating the client certificate if that is configured. Then we can configure the certificate authentication method as we saw earlier. Here we are using anonymous certificate authentication, and then the other relevant fields are configured here. The authentication domain is the default domain. So these are the basic configurations that we can do on the server side or on the firewall side for doing the authentication. When we look at the client, once the client has received the server certificate, you can check the server certificate. If the connection has been established, you can check the server certificate by clicking on this lock button next in your browser, next to the URL field, and you can see the certificate, and you can see that the certificate has been received from the server, and the client has actually authenticated this certificate. Similarly, if you want to authenticate the client certificate on the server side, when you create a new SSL VPN, you configure, give it a name to the SSL VPN. The type is exclusive. This means that it's going to be used by only one type of clients. It's not a virtual, and it's not being shared by different virtual gateways. This is the local certificate, and this is the CA certificate from the client, which is going to be used for authenticating the client certificates which are going to be received by the server when we are trying to do client authentication. And we are selecting anonymous certificate authentication here. And the rest of the configuration is the same as we saw earlier. And this is what is going to happen when we do the certificate anonymous authentication, that the client is going to select the certificate which is going to be sent to the server, and the server is going to be using that authentication, or going to be using that certificate for authenticating the client. And once this is done, this means that now the server is being authenticated by the client, and the client is being authenticated by the server. But as I mentioned earlier, client certificate authentication is optional and it is not required in all the cases. This can be configured and we can work without it as well. So this was the basic configuration for server certificate authentication and client certificate authentication. In the next video, we are going to look at some of the VPN application scenarios, different scenarios in which we can configure the SSL VPN, and then we'll also take a brief look at the SSL VPN troubleshooting. So see you in the next video. Thank you.